Thank you, Professor Wren. So my project is in broad daylight, and I want to thank Professor Patty McCarthy, my sponsor. So my project is a pilot episode I wrote about sex workers. Um, so what my topic today is about film and prostitution. And so first off, before I begin on sex for money, I want you to think about another sex industry, porn exactly. It's legal and produced and merchandised, and we would think that this one specifically would be ostracized and contained more than sex work since it's filmed and promoted on a day-to-day basis. Not to mention, it's easily more accessible to any person of any age from their own home, even if parents think they've handled all the parental controls. Porn is literally in broad daylight, and yes, it's also taboo, but it's accepted and protected more so than sex workers are. If a sex worker or pornographic actor is assaulted or raped on the job and needs medical attention, only one has a better chance of going to the hospital and getting help and not being arrested. And why is only one allowed and not the other? Or to rephrase, why is porn legalized and not prostitution? They're literally the same thing, only one has a camera in front of it. I created my TV series in an attempt to shed light on this otherwise hidden profession, which is prostitution. Due to our patriarchal society, women who have chosen sex work as a profession, because they operate outside the accepted societal norm and status quo, they are demonized, marginalized, and otherwise oppressed. It's no secret that most sex workers are women, and many people try to pretend this kind of work doesn't exist, but it does. And sex work is considered the oldest profession of all time. And while people turn a blind eye to the dangers that these workers are subjected to on a daily basis because it offends their patriarchal worldview, hundreds of women and men are murdered, maimed, trafficked, and marginalized and used badly. People, mostly men, have always and always will seek out sex workers, and it's never going to just go away. Therefore, I believe the legalization of sex work will better protect the workers, provide a venue for women and others to have open and frank discussions about sex and sexuality, and give women the greater power over their own bodies and livelihoods under the protection of the law. And sex workers should enjoy the same basic rights as every other employee, which is the right to an hourly wage, health benefits, as well as the protection from corrupt bosses and unsafe working environments. And to be clear, my pilot, the takeaway from my series itself, it's not necessarily saying to empower the women in it, the characters, but it is saying that it allows the audience to take a look into this authentic way of looking at the world and showing that there needs to be a change, and that my series is showing the light that it needs to be legalized, which is the prostitution. And it's time to stop forcing people into the dark, into the shadows, and allow them to receive justice and acceptance in broad daylight, just like you and I. And the reasons my series in broad daylight is different from other shows and movies, other films or television shows, they tend to lead or focus on stereotypical tropes along with the male gaze. For those who aren't familiar with Feminist Theory by Laura Mulvey, the male gaze in reference to film, it's a female character who is regularly eroticized for the male heterosexual perspective. It's a sexual voyeuristic viewing. So because of this, Hollywood doubly objectifies them. It's a stereotypical portrayal, and then they're also shot as a literal sexual object. And then my pilot differs because in broad daylight, which is the pilot I wrote, but I also will continue it to a full series, is written from a character's true narrative. And it lets the audience get to know all of the characters, not just the women. And it's from their point of view and not just shallow representations. Now, how to not write stereotypical characters, and from how I did it. First, you have to research prostitution, of course, from the basics all the way back to like early times, and then origin stories. And then what I did also was interviews. Of course, always you should get consent for interviews, which I did do. What I did was I did pen pals to people who are incarcerated. And then you always want to get consent. You should get consent for everything in life first. And then you always want to respect their stories that they allow you to get when collecting their data. And then if you can, wherever you're from, luckily we're in California and I'm in LA, so I was able to go on site. I went around LA and as safe as I could. I wrote down method acting because I was able to drive through Skid Row or go to First Street and just be in person. And in a journalistic technique, I was able to walk around, take notes, and see what everyone can experience as if I was in the eyes and mind of a prostitute. And next, for my writing techniques, one thing that you can do to not fall into the stereotypical writer is list every emotion per character. I have three main characters, Henry, Yesenia, and Sergeant Jones. I focused on anger, fear, betrayal, redemption, and love. I wrote out every single emotion that these three characters would feel. I wrote out how they felt in the emotion and how they responded to each emotion. And when you do that, when I did that, it helps me understand all of those characters and also how they reacted to it. And then also you can fall into how you would write a scene. And then if you liked that scene, you could insert it into the plot. And then when you do that, you can move on to their motivation. Every character, as I've learned from Professor McCarthy as well, every character should have a goal. If they don't have a goal, it's not a good story, first of all. And also, you'll learn from, if you ever watch a show or a movie and you don't like the story, it's probably a loose character. Should have a goal. Mickey Mouse, the Joker, even Jaws had a goal, you know? So every single one should have their motivation, and then that really strived from every emotion that I wrote out. And after that, you can move on to their fears and backstory. This usually is a bit difficult, but what I realized, which happened from not falling into the stereotypical trap, was that their fears, because they are sex workers, it was actually a lot easier to write for them because they're real people. And because it wasn't so entertainment based, it came naturally because they have real life issues because of the dangers and the fact that it's illegal to every day of their life. It's a roller coaster. You don't have to focus on jumping through hurdles or trying to make up all of these mechanisms and trying to do the everyday life of a high school, Riverdale or like little Family Guide show, because every day it's a new issue of it is a hurdle that they live through. And then what I created. So my ed design is my major is screenwriting and production because I'm passionate about storytelling since I was a kid. And then mostly I love character development and writing stories, especially about the people that no one wants to write about. I also like to direct, and I want to open up my own production company. So I created my own teaser trailer for my project. I wrote the full script and then I directed the short trailer. Because of the pandemic, I wasn't able to create a full one. And luckily, I was able to round up a few characters. And this is what I created. Sorry, no, it's not. This is what my pilot is about. So two cousins, Yesenia and Henry, live a double life. No one would ever suspect they make their living as sex workers. Their lives quickly turn upside down when Henry decides to stray from his new madam's control and pursue his own clientele. Viewed as an act of betrayal and a threat to business, Henry is soon targeted for murder. Yesenia and Henry must find a balance between eluding their previous boss's vengeful plotting, juggling daytime personas, while at the same time playing a dangerous cat and mouse game with shady police detectives. And this is my trailer.
What are you going to say?
I'll say I saw him lying there, and I got out, and I ran to him. He needed my help.
Miss Barajas, so you dragged him to your car and you lifted him in alone? I find that hard to believe.
I could only go so far. He was dead weight.
And it was only Sergeant Jones when you showed up? Nobody else was there?
No one.
And then I want to thank my actors, Justin, my dad, Dominic, my friend Jalissa, and then my brother, Dominic, my mom, Mike, and then once again, Patty for everything. And also I want to thank Professor Ben and then Professor Sanders for everything. And then these are my citations, everything. And thank you, everyone.